What proposal would you put before the G20 meeting in April to humanize its decisions?
Well, what the G20 can do, apart from putting in place measures, counter-recessionary measures, is to remember the poor of the world. And sure, national budgets everywhere are tighter than usual. Nevertheless, this is not a time to turn away from the poor countries of the world. In fact, if anything, this is a time to step up our commitment and our aid to those poor countries. And I hope the G20 bears the poor of the world in mind when they convene.
In Spain, the prospects are not very positive. What is your opinion of our situation?
It's my impression that Europe in general has been not as vigorous in its attempt to deal with the recession, particularly on the demand side, whereas the United States has just enacted a huge stimulus bill. The idea is to prop up demand, which in turn will stimulate supply. Measures in Europe have been much more moderate, and I'm afraid that moderation in this case may slow the European recovery.
Have you got any economic formula that could resolve the collapse of the real estate market, the growth of the deficit, the surge in the unemployment rate, and the consequent fall in consumption?
I don't have any magic bullet for curing the recession. I think that the current American administration is on the right track when they attempt simultaneously first to stimulate the demand side of the economy. I think that's the right thing to do to counteract the low level of economic activity which is currently going on. And at the same time, try to deal with the underlying cause of our recession, which is financial. That is, our banks are in trouble and they need to be bailed out. I have some confidence that the administration will succeed in that bailout process. And those two policies in general, I think, are the right way of dealing with this crisis.
You designed an incentive program for the United Kingdom so that power companies could reduce their CO2 emissions. Did it work?
Well, a few years ago, I was involved in setting up an incentive auction to encourage British power producers and other companies that emit a lot of carbon dioxide to reduce those CO2 emissions in an effort to meet Britain's target in the Kyoto Protocol. And I'm happy to say that the incentive scheme does seem to have been a success. There has been a significant decline in CO2 emissions among British companies, and the incentive scheme seems to have made an important contribution.
That's great. That's terrific. Can this kind of corporate incentive be applied to the fight against poverty?
Yes, I think corporate incentives can be used in dealing with the problem of poverty. Too often we think of the fight against poverty as a top-down struggle. That is, governments give money in large government programs. And I don't have anything against such programs, at least when they're well designed. But often the more effective approach to poverty is from the bottom up. That is, to get entrepreneurs who know the community that they're dealing with, who know the needs of the people in the area, to undertake projects which will employ local people and which will help move them out of poverty. There is where incentives come in. That is, how can you foster this entrepreneurial activity? Well, you might give entrepreneurs financial incentives in the form of tax breaks or in the form of investment subsidies or in the in the form of perhaps direct investment to undertake these worthwhile projects. I think in the long run, these bottom-up projects are the greatest hope for poverty reduction.
And go on.
Okay, I'm Eric Maskin, and I'm looking forward to visiting Spain next week, March 26th. I'll be in Fuenlabrada at the Forum of Cities, and I'm planning on speaking about why haven't global markets reduced inequality, with special emphasis on African countries.